Following your heart. When we try to hold on to beliefs that no longer serve us, the result is suffering. Trying to hold on to old beliefs just because they are familiar is easy to do. Of course there's an aeroplane. We prefer the known to the unknown because it's safe, really. The status quo that's okay to the new adventure that might fail. But following your heart will never lead you astray. Sort of authenticity and congruence is really being who you are. And that's a beautiful thing about following your heart, isn't it? It's like, I think a major part for me was I really followed my heart to want to travel, and whenever I've done that, I've been rewarded with these beautiful experiences and really just felt like I was my truest self when I was on the road. And I guess if I hadn't followed my heart and continued in the job that I was at the time and settled down and all these things that most people do, I always felt the drive at 26 and 28 and 30 to, if I was single, to hit the road. And sometimes even if I wasn't single, the drive to follow my heart and do what I really wanted to do, which was to see and experience the world. There's such a beautiful authenticity that comes out of you when you're aligned and you're doing the things that you really want to be doing in life. And another example where I really feel that is where I followed my heart is with the photography. I kind of got into it when I was working for Google Maps as a contractor. I was moving around Australia a lot. I had a lot of free time, and I had a normal amount of free time. It's just like I was in these sometimes interesting locations, and I would just kind of be by myself. And so like the weekends, it was not like catching up with friends or anything. It was like a massive amount of time, and I just started studying and reading books on photography. My heart just kind of gave me this inkling that this is something that kind of really intrigues me. I had a fairly basic little camera, a little point and shoot, and I used to go out and photograph things. And in the beginning, I just absolutely had no idea what I was doing. Like, looking back on it now, my photos were horrible looking back on it, but I just loved it. The feeling of being able to capture something and share that. I learnt like a beginner DSLR camera book, and I didn't even have a DSLR, but I just wanted to learn the foundations, like the fundamentals of composition, exposure and things. And in all my free time, I just dedicated it to the study of photography, kind of ahead of its time, really. Certainly ahead of my skill level. I had a lot more theoretical knowledge than I did practical knowledge of actually how to use a camera. But over time, the two elements sort of caught up, and I did get a lot better with the camera, probably because of having like solid fundamental knowledge from studying the theory. And just continual study, continually following my heart and my interests, and then that kind of led me to starting a YouTube channel, which I then got into video. And lately I've been able to kind of combine the photography and the video, like pictures in videos, and I've become like just fascinated by the editing and the shooting and the journey of it all. And I joined a camera club for a while, and I felt like after a while though I got a little bit too critical of my own work and started to lose the joy of it a little bit. I started to really like micro break down each of my best shots, and then, you know, these like other really high level photographers critiquing your work, you start to think, oh, actually, like, yeah, this is how like legit photographers view work. It's like, you know, there's certainly some areas to improve that I wasn't aware of before, which is fantastic. But in a way, I've kind of felt like I started to become very focused on the outcome of getting the really good shot rather than the process of just going out there and shooting and enjoying. And, you know, photography started to become very serious. So yeah, I continue to follow my heart in that space, in the photography and video, and I'm excited to see where that might take me. Another area that I've followed my heart in has been the spirituality and the sort of meditation and the yoga, and that's something I've sort of got into around about 8 years ago, through a friend, and started doing meditation retreats, and I've sort of dabbled with it, and then lately I've really sort of dived in and got like had a daily practice of mindfulness, and that's really helped in my daily life, like with stress reduction and just being a happier, calmer individual. And I kind of got into meditation like 10 years ago, at a time when it wasn't like what it is now. It's sort of really blown up in the last 5 years, but 10 years ago there was still a lot of stigma about people who meditated, and you didn't really have as much support. It seemed a lot of people saw it as kind of being quite airy-fairy, and like, yeah, there was a lot of people didn't really know much about it. Now there's a lot more education about it. It's like a lot more of a safer, easier time to get into mindfulness and meditation, which is great. But yeah, I found I've really followed my heart with that. And so in a way, like following my heart, there's been this kind of meeting, this intersection of spirituality, photography, and adventure, and human behavior as well. I'm now studying counseling, and I'm just fascinated by human behavior and suffering, I guess, like how I can help alleviate the suffering of other people, being a human and having suffered myself. So yeah, wow, life. What a beautiful thing it is. Anyway, I'll leave that for now. Thanks for watching. Peace. Yeah, and just on that, like following your heart, it's like a really easy thing for someone to say, like, you know, just follow your heart, do what you love, do what you think is right. And that's really easy to say and give that as advice to someone, but in reality, actually doing it is really hard. You have a lot of it's easy to follow your heart, but it's also difficult in the social context because of the pressure to like have a job and to, you know, be part of the society, and to, like, I don't know, for a lot of people have a family, have a mortgage, you know, that sometimes like settling into a job that pays the bills is of more importance to a lot of people than it is to follow your passion and, you know, be a poor artist. Sometimes if you have to choose between the two, I want to have a family, but I love my art, or I love my photography, or I love my you know, I love making little models, or I love jewellery, but I can't seem to work out how to make money out of it. It's a difficult place to be, and following your heart is certainly not without sacrifice, I don't think. Like, when I've often gone off on travels, it's been like I packed boxes in this like medical factory warehouse for like 4 months. It was absolutely horrible. I was so glad to like be finished with that work. I ended up like shouting at this lady because she wasn't really like helping us with the work. She was just kind of doing her own thing, and I think just the stress of every day. This was before COVID, and we had to wear the surgical masks that people wear for COVID, like, and it's just like this. Yeah, working in that environment for me personally was just like this pressure cooker. I hated going to work, and well, towards the end, because I think like travel was just on my mind, and I wanted to like just fucking go and do it. Didn't want to, but I had to put in the work in that place in order to do the travels. And, you know, following I worked in the race course for like 2 years doing landscaping, and worked for this tree removal company, and like one of the jobs I worked with this guy as like an offsider, and the guy was like you know, on the drugs like all weekend, drugs and alcohol all weekend, and then would come in like absolutely steaming from a huge weekend, and he'd be driving the truck erratically, and it was a kind of a tough place to work. And like each day we'd be out on the that highway out west, and like picking rubbish off the highway, like 4-lane traffic, and you're just a small divider, and you're just with those little gun things that you pick up the rubbish with, and putting it into a bag for 8 hours a day. Like sort of cleaning jobs. It's weird, like when I was doing that work, I felt like just had to get my like paycheck each week, and I don't know, I kind of just got through the time with this dude. I listened to a lot of like music and podcasts and things whilst I was in the truck, because we used to drive out each morning. And one of the Kiwi guys was like, I don't know how you managed to work with this guy day in and day out. I mean, and I remember saying to him at the time, oh, you know, it is what it is. And he looked at me and just said, it's not is what it is. It's like, with this guy, it's like, you don't know what you're gonna get. And I was like, at that moment, I realised that it is what it is not how I thought of it. It's not just letting things be, it's like you're actually working with a crazy person. Yeah, and in the end I stopped working there because a guy who was driving a minivan fell asleep behind the wheel and crashed into the signpost, which then like which we put up before we were cleaning the side of the road, and the signpost hit the little minibus. The guy fell asleep. He careered into the railing, hit the signpost, and the signpost smashed into the back of the truck. We'd just got out 10 seconds earlier to do work on the road, on the side of the road, and it hit the truck, and we just saw the truck screeching like down the road, and it went for about 15-20 meters. So that sign hit the truck at such force it just launched the truck down the road, and all the tools in the back, just kind of like some of the tools that hadn't been tied down, just kind of flew into the front, and there was stuff everywhere. Luckily we weren't in that truck at the time, but had we have been in there like 10 seconds earlier, it could have been a bit of a different story. So that was a bit scary, and I called in and said, look, I don't really want to work with this guy anymore, because we had to go through this whole health and safety thing. I had to get drugs tested, and the dude was just erratic, and after that incident that just kind of really spooked me, and I thought, I don't want to be around this cat anymore. So while I was talking about that, I digressed a little bit. I was talking about that because often following your heart is saying it is the easy thing, and sometimes you're going to have to do things in life which are like really hard work and quite brutal in order to get your dreams going, to get the ball rolling. And often for a lot of people, I think that involves like really hard work in often quite low paying and difficult jobs, and just grafting and hard yards for a while in order to get to where you want to be in life. Or for me, it was to travel and to get on the road and to see the world. And when I was on the road, I wasn't thinking about these jobs that I'd done before. Looking back on it, actually, I think it's like I see it as a good thing now, but I think I see it as a good thing now because I'm not doing that anymore. Like a lot of people that I met who was doing that kind of work, they were doing that like for their whole life, and like labouring and cleaning and these kind of jobs, and I guess for me, I'd always thought I'm not going to be doing this my whole life, but like after doing it for a while, you do start to think like maybe I will be. You know, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, for me personally, it was not what I wasn't following my heart doing that. It was just a job to pick up a paycheck, but sometimes a job to pick up a paycheck is like a platform to springboard you on to like the next thing. For some people it's not, like, but for some, like, then that's okay as well. But for me, the experiences that little wedge of money that I was able to save from that work was enough to instill a seed of travel, and I think I learnt a lot of things from that kind of part of my life. And it's kind of crazy looking back on it. I really think like my heart really wasn't in it for a lot of the time. I was quite inconsistent with my work. Sometimes I worked quite well. I always had the potential to be a good worker. On my day I could work really well, because I was just doing it for the money and the paycheck. It wasn't a labour of love, and I was just like, some days I just didn't want to be there, and so I did what I needed to do to keep those jobs. And sometimes I didn't do enough and I lost that job and I had to start somewhere else.